Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Glad you're here.
I am too. I'm so glad. I saw my first violent death when I was 18 years old. I was an intern at the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, 1991. It was about 10:30 at night. The guy I was riding with got a call where a man had taken a pistol out of a nightstand and shot himself. What happened when his wife went to Burger King to get something to eat, he was terminally ill, slid his bed over to that nightstand, and that's where he found the weapon. I remember going to the scene and actually thinking, I've never experienced anything like this. We get to the scene, and I can still smell to this day the gunpowder, the blood, and the Burger King. As a young kid not experiencing any of this, I could hear the screams of the wife. The guy was still alive. The paramedics are trying to bring him back. There's blood all over the side of the wall, and I'm thinking, they didn't teach this in school. Like, you can't prepare for this. Now, mind you, my dad and my grandfather were both Detroit police officers. My grandfather did 32 years on the job. My dad was in the 1967 riots. I grew up knowing that this is where God has called me, is to serve people in crisis. But I wasn't ready. I remember that scene. It forced me to learn how to handle traumatic events. So at 20 years old, after 2 years of schooling, I became a licensed paramedic. I wanted you to know that if you called 911 and Swanson showed up, you got nothing to worry about. In 1993, I got hired full-time by the Sheriff's Office. I had already been a licensed paramedic. I went to Police Academy in 1994. I was on a drug team for 2 years. And on that drug team, I learned a lot about the streets. I learned about people, and I learned about brokenness, and I learned about hope. I learned about the things that truly matter when it's on the front lines. And after I got out of the drug team, I was back on patrol, and I remember going to a trailer park where there was a domestic. And me and another officer went there from another agency, and when we got out of our cars, I could hear the glass breaking, I could hear the screams. There's people in this room who know exactly what I'm talking about. We rush in, and there's the victim. Lie's all blown out. She's got blood. And there's the suspect right there wearing a T-shirt and jeans. We grab him, we put him in the back of the car, and when we arrest somebody for domestic, we have to do a form, and we take it to the victim, and we have them fill it out, we walk through it. Now remember, I'm a young cop. I have no children, newly married. I'm going through this form while old boy's in the back of a patrol car. I'm with the victim, and around the corner, her son comes and he grabs my right leg. Now, I'm right-handed, so my pistol's on my right side. I'm thinking at the time, maybe it's just the gun, the uniform, I don't know. But this little kid who saw and witnessed and maybe himself was abused came to me. And you know what I did? Nothing. Because I didn't know. I didn't go down and say, hey, buddy, what happened? Are you okay? I didn't know how to handle a scene where some guy's brains are on the side of the wall, and I didn't know how to handle a kid who was probably crying out to help, and I didn't even see it. Why do I tell you this? Because all of us have been in situations where we were broke, where we were hurt, where we were damaged, and you don't know what to do. There's people in this room right now that probably got a text or a phone call last night saying, when are you coming home to take care of this? You thought maybe last night at the restaurant you could go put it aside, and you woke up and guess what? It's still there. You got doctor's appointments coming up next week. You got business issues. Of course, we all come together at Impact, and we put on the face and we put on all the gear, and we got to go out there and show that everything's put together, but rest assured, in this room, I guarantee there's brokenness. But after brokenness impacts all of us, there's one thing that gives me the inspiration to keep going. 32 years seeing so much, all these victims that have lost everything, and human trafficking, and so much, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dead people. How do I stay so optimistic? Because there is one thing that brokenness can't take away unless you let it, and that is hope. Hope is the escape. I can tell you, in jail, the most dangerous inmate is not the one who has the heaviest charges or the longest sentence. It's the one who's the most hopeless. When you take away hope from somebody, they ain't got nothing. So my question to you today, for the few minutes that I have with you, is to maybe just recognize the fact that you're a little bit wounded right now. Or maybe you just came out of that storm, or maybe you can see it coming. You're no different than the person sitting next to you. And it's going to impact all of us. But if you can hold on to hope, and if you can prepare for that moment in peace, you will perform like a champion in chaos. I've seen it. I've seen it. And a 911 call, when we in our business get that call, there's no option to go back to the playbook. There's no blueprint. People's lives are depending on it, and you have seconds to react. And so I'm always hopeful. So what does an iron worker do? What does a contractor do? There's so much wealth in this room. I was at the reception looking at name tags of people that own rigging companies and steel companies, generational wealth. Man, can I tell you, as much as I've seen, the thing that matters the most when people are circling the drain, when they're taking that last 30-second breath, you know what they think about? Their legacy, their family. That's what I want to get you to focus on right now. Of course, you're here as a professional, but I want you to know you wouldn't be here if you didn't have your personal life in order. And you have those affairs in order. So if you can take care of the man and the woman at home, then you're going to do a great job on the scene. So here's the answer. Maybe you're in that right now, or you try to figure out some answers, or maybe you just come out of it, or maybe you just need to tell what I'm about to tell you to somebody who needs it. And I want you to, because it works. As a paramedic, when we have a problem, you have an algorithm in order to get to the solution. When I was a sergeant, lieutenant, a captain, undersheriff, and now the sheriff, people present mega problems. And I know that there's a solution, but there's a plan, there's a system in place. Just use the system, it works. Number one, you have to look at everything in your life, everything that you touch, everything that you do as a competition. You got to compete. You've got to compete, because if you don't, somebody else will. When it comes to human trafficking and when I'm arresting predators, I tell parents, if you don't love your kids, somebody else will. When you talk about your life, there's only one of two things that can put into your life: something that's constructive and builds within you, or something that's destructive and destroys you. Light and dark cannot coexist. Positive and negative cannot coexist. You get to choose. Do you want to compete for what's the most important thing in your life, or do you want somebody else to compete for it and get it? Come on. That ain't this crew. That ain't an iron worker, or a hard-working contractor, or a business builder, or a vendor who sleeps last, gets up early, goes to work when you're thrown up by the side of your truck because you got to bring home the goods. I get it. You got to compete for everything that means the most to you. You've got to compete for it, because this world will move whether you want it to or not. And if you're not competing, you're losing. And I bet you the people that share your DNA, that have your same last name, either before or after you, need you to compete for them. The second thing is you need to be an athlete. You need to understand that this is an athletic competition. So when you're preparing in the training room and on the track in the field, you're only doing that for game day. I'm not asking you to be an athlete. I'm not talking about sports. I'm talking about the athletic mindset. I was a late bloomer. I was a kid who grew up heavy. I didn't become an athlete until I was in my late 20s. I did my first bodybuilding show, and I did a number of those, and I did marathons, but what changed my life was in 2005, when Dr. Al Jansen came to me and said, hey, you should try this, man. I went to his office. I was a sergeant at the time. And he said it's a Ford Ironman. 2005 he ran it. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 on a bike, and a marathon, 26.2. 140.6 miles, man. Swim, bike, and run. That's on ESPN. He goes, you should try it. I said, why? Because when you finish and they say your name, Chris Swanson from Davison, Michigan, you're an Iron Man. He goes, there's something that goes on inside of you. There's some rewiring that goes on. And then you realize what you did to get there, that you finished it. And he planted a seed, like I hope to plant in you today. And he planted that seed, and in 2007, at 7 o'clock in the morning, on November the 4th, I stood on the Gulf of Mexico. And that cannon went off, and sure enough, man, I did my 2.4 mile swim. I get on the bike, 112, in 14 hours, 11 minutes. You know what I heard? Chris Swanson from Davison, Michigan, you're an Iron Man. And down I went to the emergency room. Dual IVs, hypothermic, but I had my medal. I told my wife I'd never do this again until 2009. Went to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, Ironman number 2. I told her I'd never do it again until Ironman number 3, 2011, back to Florida. Told her I'd never do it again until 2014 to Wisconsin, Madison. And that was the one that I said, we're done. Until I turned 51 years old. I did Ironman number 5 last year. Let me tell you, there's something about Ironman that teaches me about life. Number one, when you want to do something, you have a big, fat vision. You got to make it so big that people think you're crazy. We have a life that as the older we get, we try to minimize the vision that we have. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how big it is. The vision isn't to the one next to you. It's not the one behind you. You have it. You own it. So when I knew I was going to be an Ironman, and people thought, there's no way. Like, do you see your background? Whatever you're doing, ladies and gentlemen, number one, when you want to be a competitor, you want to be an athlete, just have a vision. Like, what is that? And make it big. Number two is you tell people about it. The reason you tell people about it is now it holds you accountable. You know, a lot of times we want to do something, but we don't want to tell anybody because what does life do? It tells you all the reasons why it won't work. You have those people? Their default answer is no. Hopefully they're not sitting next to you. But you know what I'm talking about, the people that no matter what you do, they find all the reasons why it won't work. Don't tell those people. You tell that one person in your life who believes in you so much that they're going to see this and they're going to hold you accountable. Whatever your big vision is, whatever you've wanted, whatever you strive for, just tell one or two people because they're going to see you along your trail. They're going to say, hey, how you doing on this? Where are you on this? Big fat vision. Tell somebody. Number three is you got to break it down in small pieces and celebrate those victories. I remember on my bike, it's 112 at the 56-mile marker. I'd tape a pack of snack-sized Skittles on the handlebars. And at mile 56, I was watching the babies the whole time. And at 56.1, I'd be eating my Skittles. It was something that just I knew had to happen only after I got over that 56-mile marker, because now I know it's downhill from there. I'm telling you, when you do something, do not get overwhelmed on the big picture. Just take it one step at a time. When it comes to crisis and I'm dealing with victims, I tell people, listen, don't worry about next month. Don't worry about next year. We're going to get you through the next 24 hours. And when you stack those victories on top of everybody and on top of everything and every chance and everything that you do, can I tell you in the end, you look back and you're like, look at how far I've come. I'm going to prove it to you right now. People who've beat addictions stack days of victory on top of each other, and days come into weeks, come into months, and come into years. You remember that time when you made a decision that I'm done with the drinking. I'm done with the drugs. I'm done with something that is causing me to build my life around. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have beat addiction, I just want to prove something to the people in this room. If you are celebrating another day of being clean and dry, would you stand to be recognized? Watch this. Look at this. Look at this. Stand and be recognized. Yes. Yes. Yeah, baby. That's right. That's right. Look at that. That's what an Ironman looks like. You just stack victories on top of, don't you, brother? You just stack them one day at a time, one day at a time. That's number 3. You want to be a competitor. Number 4, people may not like this one, but I know it feeds me. Your enemies want you to lose. Prove them wrong with your results. Number 4 is when you're feeling it and you're sick and you're tired and you think that this is such a huge battle, your enemies are waiting for you to DNF, did not finish. Don't give them that. A competitor, an athlete, a champion, a warrior does not give their enemies what they want. They give victories and let that speak for themselves. Don't ever quit. Don't ever give up. You may be right now at that panic button, and for some reason they told you to come down to Orlando, Florida, and you're going to Impact, and you're like, I can't. And you had to drive some things away, and you had to make some things happen, and maybe today's the day you're like, I'm not pushing that button because I'm not going to give them that victory. Big fat vision. Tell somebody. Break it down. Celebrate. And I don't care what you do, don't give up because your enemies want you to. Number 5, happened to me in Madison, Wisconsin. I didn't prepare for that particular event. I was about 15 pounds heavier than I should have been. And when I got there, I knew in the swim, this ain't gonna be good. And on the bike, it was a hard bike. I normally get done at 4:30 because it starts at 0700. At 4:30 in the afternoon, 16:30, I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm not even close to being done. I finish, and normally I'm on that run, but at 6:30, I'm starting my run. I gotta be done by midnight. It's a double 13.1 mile loop. I get done with my first loop, and I'm just sitting there in a chair, and I am exhausted. My body's all sick. I'm nauseated. My buddy that I'm running with, Casey, he's like, man, we got to go. And I got a 13.1 more miles to run, and I'm just not feeling it. I turned to my wife, Jamie, and I said, this is going to be a long night, babe. I said, I'll be back. She could see it in my eyes because she's already been to 3 other Ironmans at the time. And can I tell you, as I started running this little death man run, and I just started putting one foot in the other, I heard these little footsteps behind me. And my wife, who's never run more than 3 miles in her life, in 2014, ran 13.1 miles with me to the finish line. Can I tell you this? You can't do it alone. I don't care how strong your grip is. I don't care how many millions you have in your bank. I don't care how long you've been in business. Nobody can do it alone. I'm not saying the race. I'm talking getting there. You may have the garden experience where only you can endure it, but there's a whole circle of people that are going to get you there. Don't ever forget those people. Don't ever forget those. Maybe you need to text somebody today. Maybe you need to go visit a graveside this week. Maybe you need to go send a message, write a letter to somebody who's poured into you when you least deserved it, who's given you grace and mercy when you didn't expect it. Maybe those people need to be reminded. Big fat vision. Tell somebody, break it down, prove your enemies wrong, and man, don't do it alone. Why do we do all that? Why do we compete? Why are we athletes? Why do we do this? Because of moments. Moments. You don't pick time, time picks you. You can't orchestrate what could happen in your life. It picks you. On May 25th, 2020, a man who looked like me, wore a uniform like me, took a grown man's life in broad daylight, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, I told you, I'm 3rd-generation cop. I know dirty cops. And I know the majority of law enforcement in America are good people who do the right thing every single day. Don't mix the two up. You have men and women that go out 24/7 and miss soccer games, baseball games, birthday parties to protect this country, whether you be in Canada or America. And when I see somebody do something that 3 generations of my people did not do, I have the same righteous anger that you have. And when I saw that, and at that point I'm the sheriff now, and we have a protest scheduled on May 30th, 2020, I knew that this was going to be bad. Because I myself saw it, and I saw the buildup of that year, and I thought, that ain't who we are. This was just normal people angry. And when they showed up at that protest at 5 o'clock, I had already briefed my team. We could take 1,000 people to jail. We had 1,000 flex cuffs. We had fire extinguishers of OC spray. But when they went to the east and went to the west, and they surrounded a fire truck, and we were outnumbered 50-1, and the night before they burned buildings across the country, in Flint, Michigan, water crisis, crime, poverty, people were watching it as though it was like a sitcom. They expected it to burn. But when they surrounded the fire truck and went, they shot a northbound walk into the Incident Command Center at the Flint Township Police Department. That's when everything changed. I can count on one hand in my entire career where I heard dispatch every available unit. Every available unit, sirens everywhere. I'm coming over the hill and I'm looking at this crowd. I'm thinking, how did we get here? How did that guy cause this? My line is all there. Everybody's got their batons, their shields. Everybody's got the OC spray. You got veteran cops and young cops that are just shaking. Some want to instigate. Some are scared to death on both sides. And the clash was there. I went to one of my guys, his name is Rudy. I said, Rudy, man, I said, tuck in, man. I said, you got a less than lethal shotgun. It's an orange stock and rail. He goes, all right. I said, it just sends a different message, man. Just kind of tuck in so it don't look like you're pointing a shotgun at him. I said this to another guy, Ryan Dobbs, 6-year Marine. I said, Ryan, tuck in, man. I said, standing there behind the line with a shotgun, it sends a message. He goes, Sheriff, look, man, they're all open carry. And you look in the crowd and there's pistols everywhere. Like one little movement on either side and there's bloodshed. Hands down, that was at that moment the only option we have. There was going to be bloodshed. But something happened inside where I thought, there's got to be a better way. And so inside the crowd was my man, Jeff Hawkins. He was a pastor. And I said, hey, man, I'm coming to see you. And I took my helmet off and I broke the line. I went and I gave him a big old hug. And I said, hey, man, I'm going to tell you right now, whatever you need it. And as soon as I started talking, I get interrupted by one of the shot callers who organized this mega event. He comes over. I didn't even give him a chance to say anything. I said, hey, that guy over there is not who we are. I said, these cops are here to help you. You tell me what we need to do. He goes, well, tell the people what they told you. I said, well, get their attention. He said, hey, everybody, the sheriff wants to say something. And this huge horseshoe formed around me, and they all went with their phones, and they're all recording it. And I said, hey, man, I said, we need to do something different. I said, this cop's over here, they give hugs. I said, we got kids, we got dogs here. I said, I want to turn this into a parade, not a protest, trying to de-escalate it. And then I asked the question. I said, what do you need us to do? Can I tell you? As a police leader, as a public servant for good, I stand against violence and I stand up for justice. And sometimes justice is done in ways that you would never expect it. And it was a simple question. What do you need us to do? Those closest to the problem, I can bet, have the answer. And they started chanting, walk with us. Walk with us. I didn't even get the last word out of my sentence. They started chanting from the belly. They started chanting, and all of a sudden they kept going, and it's like they passed me the ball, and now I got to make a move. And I got 3 seconds to decide. Do I do something that's going to hurt the people? Do I do something that's going to hurt the cops? And this is what David Muir had to say about this. ABC Nightly News.
Finally tonight here, we promise to stay on those images that are just as important. Tonight, so many of you at home reacting to our story last night here, the moments playing out across America. In so many communities, the peaceful protesters welcomed by the officers. In Bellevue, Washington, Police Chief Steve Milan and a demonstrator embracing. In Miami, you could see the line of law enforcement, and then the moment it all changes. A highway patrol trooper walking up to this woman, hugging her. She was grateful.
I love you, man. I love you, man.
In New York's Times Square, an officer who was kneeling, raising his arms. A demonstrator then shaking his hand, the two then hugged. You could hear the cheers erupting in the crowd. And it was last night here, we introduced you to Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson in Flint, Michigan, who told the demonstrators there, we are here for you, asking what can we do? When they said march, he did. Tonight here, what he said.
The only reason we're here is to make sure that you got a voice. That's it.
There we go.
and he represents who these cops are from all over the county and around this nation. We go out there to help people, not do that nonsense.
There we go.
I'm just going to tell you, we want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. These cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Saying we will protect you, we are with you. They said march with us, and so he did. I'm David Muir. I will see you tomorrow. Good night.
As I close, I want you to take away this truth. That was my moment. That light pole was my pulpit. What's yours? I didn't plan for that. But you know what got me there? Watching a wife scream when I was 18 years old over the death of her husband. You know what got me there? Thinking about a little kid who grabbed my leg, or a doctor who said, run an Ironman, or the times I had to train in the rain, or the times I didn't want to wake up and face what I faced as a patrol deputy, a sergeant, an investigator. Let me just tell you, my story is no different than yours. I'm only here to wake you up and say, what are you preparing for? When is your moment coming? Maybe you're in it right now. But the last thing you can do is give up. Ladies and gentlemen, you help build North America. You build the biggest and the best buildings in the world. No matter what you have going on in your life, you prepare in peace to perform in chaos, because your moment's coming. Thank you for having me.